This is ACOFAE. Laura Marie and Jessica Marie proudly present A Court of Fandoms and Exploration, a podcast. Fair warning, everything the hosts say is explicit, full of spoilers and adult content and shall not be used against them. They have opinions. Let's try not to drag anyone for expressing themselves and just have fun for an hour. We all deserve it.
This episode mentions Ninth House, Hellbent, and Legendborn. For full list, please see show notes. There are also discussions surrounding suicide. If you or someone you know is struggling with mental health or in a mental health crisis, contact the Suicide Prevention Hotline at 1-800-273-8255 or 911 and 988 in the U.S.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to A Court of Fandoms and Exploration, your weekly deep dive into the YA literature and fandoms that we love. I'm Laura Marie.
And I'm Jessica Marie.
And today we are discussing the 1999 film by Sofia Coppola, The Virgin Suicides. This is based on a book. We're talking about the movie. This movie, all right, I really hate to start off by saying that there's a TikTok audio, but because that dates us and it dates an episode, but there's a TikTok audio that says, I don't care if you don't like this book because this book was written specifically for me. And that audio is my feeling for this movie. I do not care about anyone's opinion at all about this movie. This movie, in my opinion, was written for me. I saw this way too young. Way too young. But when I saw it, I was very impressionable. Obviously, I was very young. But the similarities between my childhood and this depiction of childhood was so similar that when I saw it, I was not in this place anymore. And I immediately connected to it and I grasped it. And this piece of media is not only a time capsule for like the 70s and like when it came out and everything, but it is a time capsule for me and like the way that I was feeling when I watched this for the first time. And sorry, I'm talking a lot about this, but this movie is set in 1974 Grosse Pointe, Michigan. Grosse Pointe, Michigan is like 25, 30 minutes on a good day from where I grew up on the outskirts of Detroit. And I used to go to, there's a park there, Belle Isle, just like, it's very nice. It's very nice. I used to go there as a child and there was like parades and it was like a whole big thing. So Grosse Pointe is where the rich people in Detroit lived. So we went there and would like drive around and like look at all the houses and stuff. But I only ever went into a house in Grosse Pointe once. And I was jumping on a trampoline when I was very young with like a lot of other kids. And it was like this whole thing. So this movie is very, very, very deeply connected to me and my childhood. And I'm almost done. My perspective on this movie has, I would say, changed from when I watched it when I was a young, I would say preteen, to an adult. However, there is a huge chunk of me that very much still watches this movie with adolescent eyes. And I think that lets me enjoy it a lot more than, say, a jaded adult watching it now. Okay, I'm done.
I mean, no, I love that. And I think the insight is super helpful because that was one of my questions. Because I know that you had watched it when you were younger. And this is the first time that I had ever watched it. It was a movie I had known about, I've heard, but there wasn't really anything besides it. Aside from the name itself, I'd had no context of this film. And would you say, because you were saying like there's a young adolescent part of you that like brings you to this point when watching this, could you say the same thing with when we rewatch Cruel Intentions? Like you recognize it?
No, absolutely not. This is so
Completely
different on
separate
such a, yeah, it is so different. Like, yeah. Just a little bit more context with this. I used to live outside of Detroit and then I moved. And when I moved is when I saw this film. So I was in a different place, like looking back on, you know what I mean? So it's a film about, I mean, it's filmed about a lot of things, but it came out in the 90s, set in the 70s. So it's like nostalgic, right?
Yeah.
But for me, who has no context and like, I don't give a shit about the 70s, when I saw it, it was nostalgic for me on a different level.
How do you want to kick off this episode, knowing that we have your background, your familiarity, both nostalgia and then kind of seeing it differently as an adult, which we get to discuss a little bit more today? Where would your comfort lines be? How we want to just kick off the movie with the first line?
Yeah, go ahead, say it.
Cool. So the movie starts off, I mean, aside from the title, the movie starts off, literally first line is immediate foreshadowing is Cecilia was the first to go. This movie is based off of 5 sisters. Unfortunately, right at the beginning of the movie, one of the sisters unalives herself. But prior to that, there were, a couple suicide attempts before that. And they are in, they live in a nuclear household. They have their mom and dad. Their mom's a teacher, or their dad's a teacher. Their mom kind of stays at home. And they are devout in their religion. So they're kind of under lock and key for a good portion, if not all, their lives. And everybody in school, all the neighbors know about it. All the neighbors talk about it, as does many small communities, all up in everybody's business and trying to understand, and even the doctor, after the first sister, Cecilia, there's 5 of them. There's Cecilia, Lux, Bonnie, Mary, Therese, aged between 13 and 17. And even the doctor, first thing he says is, he's like, why are you so upset? Why are you trying to unalive yourself? You don't even know what pain is. And she goes, well, obviously, doctor, you've never been a 13-year-old girl.
Which is so very true. Because, every, I think, 13-year-old girl has at least some inkling of, life sucks and this isn't fair, because being a preteen sucks. Being a teenager sucks.
And then to add to that, you're like, the way your parents, different, parental figures are in your life at that, everything is just surmounting one over the other.
Well, and also the opening, we started with the opening line. There is a shot of Kirsten Dunst as Lux, straight up chomping down on a popsicle, like going to town on a popsicle. And it is very much a juxtaposition, I'm going to say that's a big word for me, of a typical like Lolita stereotype. Like she's not sexually eating a popsicle. So like right away we are subverting stereotypes. She is chomping down on it, whatever, screw you. And then immediately there's just like a nice montage to build up the neighborhood. And a little bit after this, we get the dreamy actual intro of the movie. But I would argue, and I think maybe successfully, that Lux is the main character because the aesthetic of dreaminess in this movie does kind of center on her because she's huge in the sky in that opening in the clouds, and she's like winking with the twinkle in her eye. So it's all very dreamy and aesthetic. Jess, this is your first Sofia Coppola movie, right?
Correct.
So this aesthetic, this dreamy pastel vibe is very much kind of her style, I would say. Not so much in like Lost in Translation, but like Marie Antoinette is very much like this. So it did not help when this movie came out that the vibe was so dreamy and pastel, because it made critics kind of view it as not like substantial. Do you know what I'm saying? Like kind of an art piece and not like a deep message kind of piece. Like, so it did not benefit from that. But looking back on it, the visuals stay with you, I think, a lot. And the poster obviously is iconic. Cecilia looks like Joshua Jackson to me. And that is just something that I have never been able to shake. And every time I see Cecilia in this role, she reminds me of Joshua Jackson. Did you notice that Cecilia is in the same dress the whole time we see her?
No, I didn't notice that at all. No, it just, I was just, I think, focusing on the dynamics and criticizing a lot of like the doctor's like, and even the neighbors, she doesn't want to commit suicide. She just wants out of that house, which they all did. And even they're like, the doctor's like, well, they need social interaction. I understand you run a really strict household, but like they need to have a life. And they were like, oh, we're going to have a party. We're going to invite a boy over for dinner. That's going to fix everything. And again, maybe I'm reading too much into it, obviously, but I was looking at even the moms putting up balloons, but it wasn't balloons in groups. Every balloon was individual. And I just feel like that's also like the girls only had each other, and and I say that the sisters only had each other. And they're also the only ones who understood what they were going through. And nobody, and of course, in a way, maybe even like, yes, there was the grief of the mother who is lost Cecilia. I feel like I'm all over the place because I feel like there's just so much to talk about. But there's like, also feel like, woe is me. My daughters were always loved. But then if you think of Reese, he's like, there is such thing as loving too much. And that's just as dangerous, which is clearly shown here in this movie.
I don't give a shit about the mother. We don't care about her at all. Fuck her.
No, she makes it about herself. And that's just like coming from somebody with narcissistic parental figures.
So you did not notice that Cecilia was in the dress the whole time. So Cecilia's in the dress. Every time that we see her, she's in that sleeveless lace dress, which is, of course, indicating to her mental state, which doesn't change ever from when we first see her until she jumps onto the fence, right? Her mental state stays the same. She's in the same dress. She's got the bandages with the bracelets. Those stay the same, too. So she doesn't have, even though her family is trying, I say trying loosely, to help. Obviously, they're not helping. And Cecilia is completely checked out. We're talking about this party. She's totally checked out of the party. She doesn't want to be there. She is not engaging with anybody. The only one that she shows any slight interest in is Joe when he gets there. But then the boys start using him as like a party trick to I guess impress the girls. And Cecilia doesn't like that either. And she's like, I don't want to be here. So she goes to her mom and is like, can I leave? And I think going back to your point here, it is easy for us, the viewer, to start screaming at the mom here, to be like, this is a huge red flag. Do not let your daughter, who this party is for, leave and to go off like by herself. Like, what are you doing? But then, like, that's easy for us, the viewer, to, like, yell and scream at her about. But, like, this is all context. But that party situation is so fucking awkward of I knowing how it goes. I do the 10-second skip button through the whole thing because I can't with the, like, awkward small talk. And especially like because we've been covering like Ninth House and Hellbent. He's like, yeah, Yale, do you know where Yale is? And it's just like, sir, stop. Those stupid silly boys. But it does kind of mark the basement as a place because we have all of these kind of little tidbits of information that have been given us, right? So the basement is a place. Going down the stairs is always a place. And we know that because, like, when Paul is talking later about how he was in the tunnels and, like, he was there and he saw Cecilia during her first attempt, he went down the stairs to the tunnel. The boys go down the stairs at the end. The basement is just, like, the place. You know, it's just like, because the conversations and things that usually happen in a kitchen, in a typical movie or like sitcom or something, they happen in the kitchen. They don't happen in the kitchen here. They happen in the basement or nowhere.
Well, I also think like basement in general is so significant for a lot of people in their formative years. If you don't live in Florida, because there's no basements in Florida, you know, I mean, even if you think of that 70s show, all the kids hung out in the basement. Like the basement was always like a gathering point. You know, it's kind of this, it still feels like a common area. It's not the quote unquote bedroom, especially as a teenager. So it just felt like this is another gathering place that you don't feel like you're being watched all the time.
That is a really perfect segue if we want to back up a little bit to I don't remember his name off the top of my head, but the boy that comes over for dinner after Danny DeVito tells us that Cecilia needs just a little bit more. She needs a little bit more male interaction. They bring the boy over for dinner. My note says very horny dinner. Horny dinner. Those girls are all over him, which I think is very funny. But we get aspects of the controlling mom too, and how Lux rebels like sexually, right? She's like, Lux, put your shirt on right now. And she like puts it on, but then she like takes it off a little bit.
She was a little shaft, a little shoulder, not even a shoulder. She was just like, hey.
Yeah, just like a little bit. But then it's like all out footsie war under the table. But my point being like places is the bathroom. This boy gets access to like a secret place, right? The girl's bedroom and like the girl's bathroom, because the bathroom downstairs doesn't work. And it is an interesting exploration, the way that his eyes like land on certain things in the room and in the bathroom. Specifically, when he opens the cabinet, it's just like a wall of tampons.
And
he's like, whoo! And then he closes the door, but then he takes time to smell the perfume, and he's like smelling the lipstick. Right? These like little hallmarks of like, I'm going to say girlhood. I'm going to say girlhood because when we get started on Trip, I'll start singing Taylor Swift. But these little hallmarks of girlhood that this boy is able to like experience, because to him and we'll talk about this at the end, to all of the boys that these girls interact with, these girls don't actually exist. They are like dreamy kind of fantasies. They are never seen as like real individual people by any of the guys, even though all of the boys like know their names and like know everything about them and like all of these like little trivia things. It's just so fun. I, however, though, would just simply melt into the ground if I left my retainer on the plate at dinner. And they were like laughing at me and like giving it back to me. I would never recover.
He ran out the door. He didn't recover.
No. Yeah. I would never, ever, ever, ever recover that. Oh, I'm looking at my note. His name is Peter. We do get our first, I would say our second indication of the environmental crisis that is kind of looming in the background of this story. It is during this dinner with Peter that Cecilia mentions that the frogs are dying. So we have our mentions of the frogs dying. The elm trees are all dying. So it's just a theme in the background.
Well, and talking about that theme, you know how long I was like watching the movie, and obviously the notice is on the elm tree in the front yard. And I'm like, it's bright, it's red, it's there on every external shot. And I kept thinking, when is this has to be addressed. This isn't just a prop. When is this going to be addressed? And even Cecilia, like you said, she's more attuned to like what is the state of the environment than just having a boy at the table. Like that's what is, you're like, there's so many, Cecilia was very much like, there are bigger things in the world going on than this. And you flash forward to after her death, but they're going to cut down the elm tree, and and the guy's like, oh, everything's going to be infected, blah, blah, blah. We need to cut this down or it's going to spread. And the father's like, well, if the world keeps going the way it's going, like you say it is, and like my daughters say it is, we're going to, we're all going to shit anyway in a year. So what the fuck does it matter?
And it did. I love that you said that because everything did go to shit in a year. The time frame here is exactly 13 months. So it's very, very short. It is, of course, after Cecilia asks to leave the party that she does throw herself out the window and onto the fence. And we get our first kind of, I guess our second big like shock, I would imagine, of the movie. The first being like Cecilia in the bathtub. The second now being Cecilia on the fence. James Woods is he's a person. That's all I'll say about that. But in this role, I like him here in this role. He plays this kind of like, I don't know, oblivious, pushover, bumbling teacher.
Yeah, because do you feel like he has this whole fear of his wife, like a happy wife, happy life? You know what? Even when it's kind of like she's the one who makes the rules. It's just easier to listen to her than like deal with anything else.
Yeah, I think so. And I also think that he does pick and choose his battles, right? Because they did go to homecoming. Like he did stick up for, so like
happy. Like he was like, let me talk to my wife. Like he saw when Lux won homecoming queen and all his girls were there. Like he was just like, I'm so glad. You could tell he was like, I'm so glad I fought for my daughters for this.
Yeah. So I don't know. The dad is kind of, cause he does lose it at the end. He's like mumbling to his plants. So I don't know. The dad is kind of, I'm not going to say sympathetic, but I'm kind of just like, with him. It's the mom that gets all of my anger because
she gets all my anger. Yeah. No, yeah, she gets my anger.
Her shit is wrapped up in the religious shit too, which just does not fly for me. Especially like, we'll get to it, but the religious imagery is like a lot here. There's pictures of like crucifixes on the ground. The image that
the Virgin Mary everywhere.
Yeah. And specifically the crucifix that has Lux's bra hanging off of it, I think is just like you could not represent Lux any better than that. That is exactly it. So yeah, the religious imagery, Cecilia has the Virgin Mary like card in her hands during her first attempt. And the card, the cards show up later. It's a whole thing. So like the mom gets all of my rage here. Yeah. And I'm not excusing dad, but it's mostly mom. I have to say the sprinklers coming on as the dad is holding Cecilia was just like a little touch that was like not necessary, but also was just like a little bit of like, because I do feel a certain way every time those sprinklers come on as he's like standing there having this like big dramatic moment and there's like crying and everything going on. It does feel kind of like a Wes Anderson kind of thing to me. It's just one of those things. All I have to say is that if a priest walked into my house after a tragedy and walked into my bedroom, there would be another tragedy and it would be the priest. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I don't know. I never had that happen to me. Like just a priest walking into my house or coming door to, I don't know. Maybe it's just where I grew up, how I grew up, but just the idea of a priest visiting my house, just come and check on you. And no, I'm already that made me uncomfortable. And I was worried. Again, I went into this movie essentially like completely blind. That another trauma was going to occur, honestly.
Yeah. She's like, please no. But it does give us this priest coming in and seeing the house through an outside perspective, because that's what it's giving us, is it gives us the dad in his grief, completely in his grief. There's a arm extended from the priest for help, and the dad almost takes it, but then he doesn't. And then through the priest, we see the house start to decay here. So with the background with the environmental decay and the environmental kind of tragedy that's going on in the background, the house also does reflect this. So there is, there are plates everywhere and like food everywhere and the clothes are strung everywhere and the house is dim and everything is drawn, everything is quiet. So we do get that, but we also get the priest saying very specifically that he listed Cecilia's death as an accident. Now, why is that important? Because they are Catholic, and if you unalive yourself, then you cannot be buried in the cemetery, because it's a whole fucking thing. So that is why he did that, which is why, sorry, I'm banging my desk because it's all connected, which is why the cemetery workers are on strike, because this is another indication of the environmental decline, leaving bodies like to decay, right? So you can see the visible decay of the, it's a whole thing. But because Cecilia's death was listed the way that it was, she's allowed to be buried in the cemetery. And because she's so young, that gets the sympathy of the cemetery workers. So that is how all of that works.
I thought it was because of her age, not because of the religion, the reason behind listing it as an accident. I mean, I knew that was like a religious thing.
It's a little kind of a trivia thing that isn't even like listed in like the facts and everything, but that's one of them. The neighbors, as you were saying earlier, the neighbors kind of treat the girls as a spectacle. This is emphasized when they are trying to dig the fence out of the house, right? The neighbors are all there and they're having like lemonade and like everybody's watching and
everybody's literally like, get your popcorn. Something's happened at the Lisbons.
Yeah. And they're all there and they do dig that fence out and it's just like a whole thing. But then we get, I think, kind of really the first indication that the boys being the four boys in the neighborhood, the boys that act as our like narrator, which is like not, the narrator is not any one of those four boys, but that's neither here nor there. But these four boys end up in possession of Cecilia's diary, and they get that diary from the plumbers.
No, what you're saying, I was so grossed out by that. To like, here you have a plumber coming in, and he takes it upon himself, not just the plumber, but the people who are supposed to be helping take care of your house. Now, like, and how morbid that is. That at this point, Cecilia has unalived herself, so now you're taking a dead girl's diary. This is just so gross, and it's just consistent with the theme, like, just not that it's an actual theme, but I feel like it's always the men who are like, I mean, that is part of the theme in the movie, fetishizing and romanticizing and making, like, creating women in their head that goes with their fantasies, not what's actually going. Because like you said, at the end of the movie, we know that they're like, oh, we had the pieces, but we really didn't know how to put them together, because you didn't know them. You knew this like idea of them that you created.
I think now's a good point, because you're so fired up about this, for me to kind of tell you the perspective that I have when I watch this, my adolescent perspective, because it kind of starts here. This was, as a child, one of the most romantic things I had ever seen, because these boys had taken the time to get somebody to find this diary. They're sitting around, they're reading this diary, they're fantasizing about this girl, they're trying to get to know this girl, they're trying to insert themselves into her life and to kind of gain insight into her like everyday life with her sisters. When I saw this as a child, this was like nothing I had ever seen before. What boy would ever put in any sort of effort like this? None at all. So obviously, here's the thing, obviously they love them because they put in all of this effort, because they are children. I think that is something that is glossed over because like you have all of this anger, and I'm not telling you you're wrong. Obviously, you're completely right, obviously. But like, these are 14-year-old children. So like, everything that we get so like, about never crossed my mind as a child. Because this was the most
sense.
Yeah, this was the most dreamy, aesthetic, tragic thing that I have ever seen. So like specifically here, when they are talking about like, it is through these diary pages that we understood the imprisonment of being a girl. We knew that they were women in disguise. We knew that we were nothing. We were created to make noise, to entertain them. You could not have said anything more profound to me as a child. I was eating this up. Like, of course, yes. And of course they are completely obsessed with them. I love these girls. I would love to like be friends with these girls. Like that is the mindset I think a lot of people had if you watched this when you were a child. So it is hard, and it is an exercise with yourself to go back and be cynical with this, because at 14, when these boys are at these girls, and it's like, it's a sexual level of creepy, but they're like, they're not like touching themselves on screen while they're doing this. Do you know what I mean? They're not like, it's more of like, to me, it's not as sexual at this point yet.
At this point, yeah. But I mean, and even in some points later, after they've been spying on Lux, hooking up on the roof and all that, it was more about, oh, you know, we're going on these adventures with there. And Cecilia didn't die. She's just a princess in a far off land, or, you know, an empress in a far off land. And, you know, we went to the Great Wall of China. Like, they were genuinely like, they've created in their minds, like this alternate universe of, life with them, not just sexualizing them. Like you said, it comes later and you have the ins and outs of it all. Saying it. But this is like some of the things that we talk on the podcast too, when you're like, this is why we read and this is why we look at things differently, and to look, because the experience that looking at things and experiencing things at a certain age, and we've talked about it with a lot of books, or like, if I reading this book at this age, I was all in, but reading this as an adult now, you're like, what was I thinking? Everything was there, or different life experiences. So it makes sense why you're like, this was everything. And it does make sense, even talking it out, because you're like, hearing that at 13, the effort at 13, who's going to do that? They didn't even do that in the shows that we watched at that age.
They didn't.
Yeah, they didn't. Exactly.
They didn't. Oh my gosh. So this diary scene, these fantasy scenes that we start to have here, these were just like, I don't know, Manic Pixie Dream Girl was not something that was in my head when I saw this as a child. But obviously that is kind of a vibe of what they kind of see here. Because they are, they're boys. They're boys.
They're 14-year-old boys. At that point, is any girl considered a Manic Pixie Dream Girl? Because it feels that way sometimes.
I think it feels that way sometimes. I feel like for them specifically, because they were so inaccessible. And also, and it's something that I don't think is discussed a lot, but then again, people don't discuss this a lot. The girls, the sisters, know the four boys, the four neighborhood boys that are obsessed with them. Like, they know them. They know their names. They know where they live. So they are aware. I guess my point is, at some point, these girls reach out to these boys, right? Like, we know that. They give them a code. They reach out. They're sending them stuff. whatever. So at some point, the girls like bring them in. So when we say like the boys are completely obsessed with the girls, it's like, yeah, they are. And like, yeah, no, they probably didn't love them, but they are 14. So it is like a weird kind of love. And like at 14, you do actually like, it is actually like real love at 14, you know, even, but like they used the boys. They used that obsession for their own like end, very much so, at the end of the movie. So it isn't fair to me to say that the girls didn't know that they were watching. They knew that they were watching. They knew the details of their watching so much that they were able to send notes and send cards and create a record playing code and, you know, doing all of this. Now, was all of that stuff a cry for help? Absolutely. Absolutely it was. But those boys are 14. Like, I guess my point to be, I don't necessarily understand the criticism of, well, the boys didn't understand that the girls were reaching out for help. Of course they didn't. They are stupid 14-year-old boys. They were getting attention from the object of their obsession. What did you want them to do with it?
In defense of that, too, you can give the same signals to guys now and they still wouldn't pick up on that.
Right? Like, you could just be like, please help. And they'd be like, records? Like, you know, it's just,
hey, please help. Here's the playlist I put together on Spotify. You're like, bro, no, that's not. But okay, maybe this is a plot hole. I don't know. I want to know with how strict their parents are when they were just like, call us. Or no, they didn't say that. The boys found their number in the phone book. How did they call the girls without the phone ringing and alerting their mother? That's just like a random plot hole. I did try to think like maybe the house had two lines because I had a friend when I was in middle school. That's what her parents did. But then I realized, no, this is the 70s. So that wouldn't have it been established yet. It was something like just so small, knowing how my parents have been, that would not, you try to like pick up the phone and pick it up before it rings. So your friends you could have your late night calls and all that stuff. I'm sorry. I'm totally dating myself, but it was just so wild to me. I did remember trying to sneak, and that was like when that existed, sharing a phone line.
I don't know. I guess it never really occurred to me because it never seemed like they had friends outside of each other. So like, why would anyone care like who they were talking, like, I don't know. It was just one of those things. Another plot hole you could say, as long as we're bringing up plot holes, is at the end, Lux says that her mom is an insomniac and that it takes her a really long time to go to sleep. But when the boys are there, it's midnight. So obviously it doesn't take that long. But like, plot holes abound. Plot holes abound.
With her saying an insomniac, she's going to go to sleep in 5 minutes. Most insomniacs, myself included, I go through like, ups and downs of my waves. We're at least up till 3. And most people are. So I thought it was really funny. Like, oh, midnight. And you would have heard those boys creeping around. The second those basement stairs creaked, that mother would have been up.
Yep. We'll talk about it when we get to the end. We are up to the news anchor. The news anchor comes in and out throughout the movie. She tries to interview the girls about Cecilia in the beginning. She shows up at the elm tree. She's throughout the movie, but she shows up here. But then we get the news report where it's basically like, do you know where your kids are? And there is a girl.
Still, when they play it, you're like,
it's bad. But there's a girl that talks about like, I really wanted to like unalive myself. So I put a bunch of rat poison like in a pie and then my Nana ate it. All I could think about, all I could think about was our Miss Scream Queen Chanel here going, rat poison only works because rodents don't have a gag reflex. If you gave her human rat poison, they would immediately puke it all up. So not only would I have survived your pathetic attempt on my life, you would have made me skinnier. That's all I could think of every time.
I love Chanel.
Every time. We see Cecilia's ghost 3 times. Of course, Cecilia's in the same dress. She never changes out of her dress, but we see her ghost in the room when the dad goes to close the window, and it ends up being Bonnie, but we do kind of get a flash. Chase sees her in the tree, and Tim sees her in his bedroom. It's very kind of like sad. And she says like, gosh, you like snore really loud. It's just like mean. Okay. But so yeah, we see her ghost 3 times, and then it's just like not addressed. It's just kind of what, like a mood atmospheric kind of thing.
I thought there was going to be payoff with that, and there wasn't. But I guess it was just like kind of like in her final goodbyes, or to solidify the fact that she's still very much like at the forefront of what everybody was thinking. Because I found it interesting, because now that she's dead, and that happened during the summer, and then the school year starts, the commentary from the boys is, the girls are here, they're back for convocation, and everybody's acting like nothing happened, which was really interesting that was their perspective. The sisters are laughing, they're smiling, and anybody who's familiar with grief knows that it's like a roller coaster. It's not a full circle, you go back and forth and all the things. But I appreciate, I can't remember who it was, but one of the sisters, one of the boys in the school says like, oh, hey, I'm so-and-so. And she straight up says, and it reminded me of Legendborn with the before Bree and after Bree. And she goes, I've gone to school with you my entire life. You've never said hi to me before. Basically, my sister died, and you're feeling like you need to have like a pity salutation with me. And I'm not for it. So like, leave me the fuck alone. And I really respected that. Be like, don't talk to me now. You did not care this whole fucking time.
Yes. Which is, There is a deeper layer to that, though, because he's one of the boys that is obsessed with her and her family, and she knows that, and she knows him, and he knows her, but he's never had the guts to talk to her before. But he is, as you say, trying to like insert himself a little bit into her life, because he and all of the boys are trying to identify the cracks, right? That's what they say in the beginning. When they say like the September 7th convocation, like where were the cracks in them? Because they look fine. Like, where is it? So he's trying to, and it's Mary, and she totally shuts him down, which is funny, because Chase, the boy that is talking to her, is the boy that Lux pays the most attention to. He's the one that she undoes his belt buckle at the very end. She's like kind of like flirty with him a little bit. So you were talking about grief, which I think is really excellent here, because we don't really get any of the sisters' depictions of grief. The only thing that we can kind of extrapolate here is that Lux is dealing with everything by, I'm going to say, kind of in her slut era. She's all up in her slut era. And that could be a lot of things. It could be the way that she's dealing with her grief. It could be that she's 15, and it could be that Josh Hartnett is fucking hot. So I'm
gonna go with an option 5, because 4, I think it's also like a rebellious nature against her mother and religion, and then 5 would be all of the above. So all of it.
Yeah. All of it. Trip Fontaine. Of course, we have had some Trip Fontaine flashbacks. We get Trip Fontaine as Josh Hartnett, my God, being so charming,
6'3".
just like waltzing into school. He's 6'3". He's 6'3". He's got cheekbones in this movie that could cut glass. and he's just all over this. He's excellent here. The way that he plays Trip, that charming, like, come on, like, let's just do it. Like, just tell him that I would fold so hard. That is a charm that works on me. And I hate that it works on me, but it does. It does. I would totally be the girl behind the desk being like, dismissed. Sure. It works on me. Fine. Whatever. But it doesn't work on Lux. And that's what I really love. And that's what drives Trip crazy.
That's what he really loves too.
Yeah, it is. Trip has to love a lot of things because Trip we get in flashbacks being interviewed by who we assume are the boys when he is old. Trip is in rehab. Trip says a lot of bullshit. Trip says that he never got over her. Trip said that, he never was one to pursue, but he couldn't get her out of his mind. She drove him crazy. Ugh.
But I feel like it's textbook. He's saying all that shit. It's textbook. This is the one girl that didn't fold and didn't give you the attention. It made you work for it. Because flash forward to after homecoming and she slept with him, he dipped before she even woke up. And even after she was like, no, I really don't think so. Like, my dad, we have curfew. And he's like, no, it's going to be fine. Like, we'll get, we'll say something happened. And then they all got fucked. Like, all the sisters, not actually literally, but like their mother, they went down, they said, the sisters even said, we knew we were going to get in trouble based on Lux's decisions, but we didn't realize it was going to come down that hard.
And you know what? To be fair, I would have stayed out all night with Trip too. I really would have. That is just how I rolled in high school. So Trip has a gay dad, and he says that it's just no help. Like, his dad is just no help when it comes to girls. He's like, be yourself, keep your hair out of your eyes. It's just a very cute little detail. The hurricane presentation where Trip asks, or I guess tells Lux that he's like going to come over on Sunday, and then he's going to ask her out. That is after kind of a little montage of Lux just like straight up ignoring him. I love it so much. I love watching him just be like awkward. I love watching him work for it. The hurricane presentation is interesting because it is just another indicator to the environmental like theme that is going on kind of in the background, as is the animal show that they are watching on Sunday when Trip comes over to watch, quote, the tube. What did your face look like when Trip leaned in and said, "You're a stone fox," because my feet kick and I giggle?
I looked like Lux, where you're just like, I'm going to look straight. I'm going to keep my composure, but I am smirking so hard because how Lux treats Trip initially is very much how I am as a person. I've said it on the podcast before. You could be the most you could be the most attractive person I've ever seen, and I will actively go out of my way because I know that they know that they're attractive and they're having everybody else follow over them. So I'm probably going to be kind of dismissive about it. And she does that when he approaches her at lunch too. And he's like, "Hey, Lex." She's like, "Hey." And then goes back to her sisters. And she's like, "Mom gave him put meat on a sandwich." And he's just like, and just walks away. He doesn't know what to do. And I think it's so funny.
I cannot get over the awkwardness when he comes over to watch TV. They're all in that room. Like, oh my God. Like, all four sisters, the mom, the dad,
and putting her, she's like, and the mom sees it. The dad's doing the dad thing, falling asleep in the recliner, watching TV. And the mom's just like literally between them. She's looking at their glances. She's picking up on everything. And then Lex putting her feet on the coffee table, and her mother's like, "Put your feet down." Because she sees Trip looking at her feet. I thought it was so funny.
It's so funny. It's just such a random thing, too. And I love that Lux is knitting. Like, okay. And I like how Trip is like, "What are you doing? Like, And he's so awkward the whole time. And then when the mom is like, it's so late. And Lux walks him to the door. He's still awkward. And he's just kind of like standing around. And he does the slow walk out to his car. And when he gets in the car and he's just like sitting there and he's like breathing, and then Lux just explodes into the car and starts like passionately making out with him. Just like, I have also lived in a strict household.
Yeah, I get it. I get it so hard. And I do remember I thought I missed a scene. I was like, wait. It's literally been 30 seconds. She ran up to her room, changed into her nightgown, jumped out the window, and then she's like, gotta be back in bed for bed check. I mean, I lived under a strict house. I did not live under a bed check house.
Yeah, for real. I have to think that there's some sort of ladder situation because Lux spends a lot of time on the roof and they are able to get in and out to like send their messages and to like get boys up there. So they have to have like some sort of ladder. I would not put it past them. There's just no other way. I love that run out to the car, passionate makeout scene. And I like that he's left in like this bewildered state. Right? His hair is everywhere. He's shocked. He's got her gum in his mouth. He's just like met his match there. And it's just so great. It is, however, tragic. She is 15. She's 15. Like, you can't, like, he is in high school too. Like, this is high school. This is not like a weird pedophilia. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying it is tragic because she's so young. Like, she should have the rest of her life to have these experiences, right? But we know that she doesn't. And it is, you know, up for debate when they decided when they would do what they are going to do. But looking at it, you know, it is just very sad. It is very sad. And all of kind of their actions just get sadder and sadder as we go because the happiest moment we have is homecoming, don't you think?
Yeah, it's not only it's the homecoming experience too, because even when they're going home, they're looking for their dresses for homecoming. It's the first time that I saw their mother smile amongst their daughters and how grateful they were. And then, you know, they were saying like, oh, you know, we got all the materials and she added, you know, inches here, like to the hem and to the bust and to all of this and full coverage, everything. But they didn't even care. And then I was also looking at the other girls in the homecoming outfits and I go, oh, it's all pretty similar. So some people even had higher collars, but I digress. But that was the happiest moment you saw the girls with their mother. And like, for a small moment, you're almost thinking they're starting to say yes because they learned from how things ended up with Cecilia that there's like, you know what, maybe there is some self-reflection we need to do as parents, hoping that the same thing doesn't happen again. And here we are. It does to all of them.
And even though, like we said earlier, like the dad, like, Trip goes to the dad and the dad is like, you know, I know you want to take her to homecoming, but like the wife has the rules. We can't change the rules. You know, we did it for the older ones. We got to do it for the younger ones. And Trip pitches like the group date. Like here's the other thing. Like, not that I ever kind of romanticize Trip, not in that way, because he's like really shitty quickly. But like that is also a lot of effort for like a high school kid to like go to your house and watch TV with your parents and then like negotiate a date with the dad at school. I don't know. It was just like a lot of effort. Hayden Christensen is in this. Surprise. He's one of the boys that gets to take one of the girls to homecoming. I think he takes, I wrote it down somewhere. I think he takes Mary. No, he takes Therese. Yeah.
It's not, I mean, I guess it was implied ahead of time because at first, you know, they were like, who's going to get us? Like, who are we going with? And they even said, like, we're getting raffled off. It doesn't even matter. And I feel like some of the sisters were even like, they were excited because they knew where they were all going. But at the same time, they were like, they're just doing it for Lux. It doesn't even matter. And let's just enjoy it while we can, because Lord knows the next time we'd have a sense of freedom. And they didn't. So,
yeah, they don't. This is the last it. Tripp in his velvet suit. Stop. Josh Hartnett, what are you doing? Red velvet suit. Pinning on those corsages. Oh my gosh, why are corsages so difficult to pin? Unnecessary.
I just thought the mother was going to stop them. Like, oh, no, that's fine. We'll take care of it, because they were so I just had this things that happened, things that didn't happen in the movie I expected to happen, and things that did happen. I was like, wait, what?
Yeah, she was sweet. The mom was actually like, why don't you pin him on? And then that's how we get Josh's like really cute, like, we didn't know. And the flower guy said to get white, and white, and they're in like their patterned white dresses. It was very sweet. You could tell he's like really nervous there. And it's just, oh my gosh. And I like a small moment is when all of them are driving to homecoming and the girls are kind of like gossiping about the neighborhood and kind of like, well, he's having an affair and like, look at his shitty house. And the boys are like, oh, well, that stump isn't really a stump. It's actually like, like tunnels and stuff. And the girls are like, okay. But then I'm bringing this all up because Hayden, Darth Vader, says to the smoke ring, don't let it die a virgin, which is just, foreshadowing for the rest of the movie, really.
Logistically, I want to know how 8 people fit in that car.
Yeah, it looked very cozy. There's not enough seatbelts for anybody. There are lots of laps.
There were lots of laps, which is like, we've all been there, right? Well, assuming. But knowing how the mother was like, who's driving? How long have you had your license? We don't bring the girls in. That was another thing. We don't bring the girls in the car often because, the likelihood of accidents, blah, blah, blah. So then I was like, oh my God, they're going to get an accident on this way. So knowing all of that background from the mother, and then for them to go lap sitting with 8 people in the car, I was like, I don't think Mrs. Lisbon knew what the seating situation was in the car.
No, I almost guarantee she had no idea. She also probably had no idea that peach schnapps makes the panties fall off, because they do. Peach schnapps is famous for making the panties fall off. And, drinking at homecoming is also pretty famous in my opinion. Love that for all of them.
I love that for all of it. And Lex is clearly the more rebellious of everybody. So then she would even tell her sister, like, stop being a goodie. Just enjoy it. Just like live it up. And then who was it? Bonnie was like not into drinking. She tried it because she got peer pressured by her sister. The boys never peer pressured her, which I do have to respect. Not Trev. Trev was whatever. But the boys in general, I was expecting it to also go another way. And I was weirdly pleasantly surprised that it didn't.
Oh yeah, the boy there. It's
of course I was pleasantly surprised.
Well, yeah, but like the boys could have been like weird or gross about it too. They didn't. It was not addressed at all. It was just not a thing. It was just like, oh, okay, yeah, fine.
I liked Tripp's logic though with picking which boys.
Oh yeah, he's got the killer weed. He's got the car, and he's got the smarts,
and he has all the awards. He's great with the parents. I loved it.
It would be perfect. Like, we love it. When Tripp and Lux are crowned homecoming king and queen, that is all of high school. High school, everything has that moment, right? But I love this moment for them. Like the music is playing, the balloons are falling. All of the sisters are having like a good time. And Therese even says like, I'm having the best time, which again is just kind of like really punches in the gut, like the tragedy of this. Like they are having the best time, and the dad, like you said, is having a good time. Like everybody is like so there, and then Tripp has to go fuck her in a field and leave her there. Like, men, right? Like, why was any of this necessary? But ooh.
And then he tries to be like, I really did like her. And then he's like sitting on his bed, like thinking, he goes, I really did like her. But then like, I didn't anymore because the chase was over. You were over it. You already put in the work. Like it was so, obvious. In that moment, after that moment, like you could see, like she was just so content laying there. They were holding hands and he's just looking up at the sky like, oh, what the fuck do I do? How do I get out of this?
And it's weird too. And it kind of re-emphasizes the fantasy of these girls and how he has romanticized this situation, right? Because Tripp is old when he's reminiscing about this. Like he's in rehab. He's got to cut his interview short. He's got 6 p.m. group, whatever. But this, when he leaves her, is the last time he ever sees her. It's the last time she ever sees him. And he says like he didn't care at that moment. It was different after that moment. But then he also has the audacity to say that at least he was able to taste that kind of love once. Some people go their whole life and never taste that kind of love. What? I'm sorry. You left her in a field. Why are you romanticizing this? Is it because she's dead? Like what is it? So like, it was so shitty. And he's such a shitty person for doing that. And it's just like, fuck you, Tripp Fontaine. Fuck you. Damn. But the dreamy shot of Lux like waking up in the field and it's like blue and she's alone in that white dress and she can't put her shoes on. She's struggling with it. And then she's like reaching for her crown. It's like, she's so childlike right there. So sad, so tragic. Did you notice the taxi does not wait to get paid? The taxi sees the mom just like throw Lux in the house and the taxi's like, oh.
Yeah. Nope. I think you even hear him back into something at some point. But like just the difference between the parenting and their styles, like the father was just like, first, he's just checking her. Oh my God, are you okay? Is everything okay? And the mother that wasn't even a concern. It wasn't are you okay? What happened? It's your fault, blah, blah, blah. You're past curfew. You're being punished. And now I'm punishing all of your sisters. But like, this just goes to like the relationship dynamic between the father and like the husband and the wife.
So there is speculation that there was like some spousal abuse there going on, either physically or psychologically. So there is always like that to consider, the wife to the husband.
I was going to say the wife to the husband because, yeah.
Not the other way. So there is, all these things. So the retaliation. So Lux being out all night just totally screws over all of the girls. They go into complete isolation. The mom pulls them from school. They don't talk to anybody. They don't leave the house. It is just horrible. And then specifically they say the mom comes back from a spirited church sermon and demands that Lux burn all of her records. And she begs not to do this, and she does eventually do this, and it ends up producing all of this smoke into the house, which goes to the environmental theme, the toxic decline, and the feeling of suffocating that these girls have being in that house. Which I, upon watching it this time, realized that house is wall-to-wall carpet. And that would also suffocate me. That's like a hell for me now that I'm saying it out loud, wall-to-wall carpet.
There's even a line in one of the fights eventually that Lux tells her mother. Her mother's trying to say like, oh, I'm really just trying to protect you. And Lux says, you're not protecting me. You're suffocating me, which again continues in the, basically there is an asphyxiation between all of the girls at the end when they unalive themselves.
Exactly. Oh my gosh. I would say it is about this time that Lux starts fucking boys on the roof, right? The boys tell us that when they are completely isolated somehow. And they say, like, they don't know how the girls meet these boys. They don't know how they arrange it. They don't know what happens. But Lux starts fucking boys up on the roof. And the boys start watching. And as we were talking about earlier, like, this could have gone super weird and become this weird, like, circle jerk kind of porn situation. And it didn't. It turned into all of these our 4 main boys and a couple of the other neighborhood boys on the telescope, kind of like narrating the sexual acts going on and then judging the fuck out of the boys, especially the one that didn't last very long. They're like, "And it's over? Are you serious? Fuck, dude. Like, Or they're like, "Yeah, these guys are the dumbest guys on the planet. They can't give us any details. Like, what? I don't know. Who did you?" Or one of them's like a Burger Chalet guy, and they're like, "Hey, you think the Burger Chalet guys never get any?" But like, hey, but they do say when they're doing this that Lux's clothes like stay on. They do make a point to say that in the beginning. They're like, "No, they're like fully clothed," and she just stands up there and smokes afterwards. And it's a tragic thing. It's very sad.
Well, it's also interesting that they note that, like, she's asking them, "Are you judging me? Like, do you think what we did is wrong? What else is she's like, do you still like me?" Like, she is looking for that validation through men, and none of them are really giving her an answer except for the one who's just like, "No, I don't think what you did was wrong," just to appease her, but he clearly didn't mean it.
Yeah, at all. He's like, I knew what those girls want to say. I knew what to say. It's like, dude, no, you don't. No, you don't. But I do, again, I like the cue here of when that guy is telling the boys, like, "Yeah, she asked me this and I said this, whatever." We get a mom calling out, "Chase, come practice your violin before dinner." Just kind of reiterating that these are kids. Like, these are young kids. And he runs off and like goes and practices violin. It's just, it's a lot of things. It's a lot of things. The dad loses his job. Obviously, he loses his job. He starts talking to plants. The girls aren't in school. The principal can't have that. Like, he loses his job. Okay, fine. The girls are still in isolation. And they say here now that, like, Trip and his friends from homecoming, like, they never put in any effort to see the girls. Like, Trip never saw Lux again. And, like, Hayden never called Therese. They just stopped. And so the boys were like, "Well, we noticed that a bunch of catalogs started arriving at the girls' house. So we looked and saw what catalogs were there, and we noticed that they were a bunch of travel catalogs. So then they started ordering the same travel catalogs. And then this is where this boy fantasy takes over, where, again, it could have gone into a gross, like, sexual thing, and it didn't. It went into, like, because they don't know them. It went into this, like, dreamy, pastel, vibey, aesthetic, travel, happy, kind of road trippy situation that scarred them for life.
Again, I know I have to realize, like, they look at these boys, they have an obsession. Because, like, how did they know? They were snooping through the mail to get, like, that's how they figured out all of these catalogs that they were ordering.
Yeah. Yeah. Or you could even say, like, they were, like, looking and seeing, like, what the mail, through the window, like, you could say. But again, just to kind of, like, drive it home, as a child watching other children do this, it was the most romantic thing in the world to me, because who did that for me when I was absolutely nobody? And these were the same age, so who's gonna look at my mail and pay enough attention to me to order the same catalogs as me to kind of maybe relate to what maybe I was thinking of when I was reading it? Like, this was so just, like, amazing to me that somebody would put in that kind of effort, that it was never creepy. It was always kind of sad to me. So as an adult watching it, knowing that the boys never understood the girls is just, like, another really lovely layer to all of this.
So I have a question with these layers that the boys didn't really know them, because we do know at the end of the, like they have, there's, their voiceover narration after the parents leave. They feel, and I guess this goes to what you said with, look, they're 14 and in love, and only a way that you can be in love and have this obsession with them because they believe them to know. Do you think that's why, when they have Cecilia's diary and they're trying to understand them, but they're completely glossing over the dying trees and the elms? Like they're like this, they're just completely dismissive because it has nothing to do, even though that's all foreshadowing also of how wrapped up she is as a person. Like, I just feel like they have this idea of them and it's all very surface level of what they know.
Yeah, it is completely surface level of what they know. And I do think it kind of just speaks to the boys' complete ignorance and just like, they are not aware of what's going on because the trees are like on the whole, like everybody has a tree. The whole street is lined with trees, so it's like, it's just not there. It's not affecting them. So like, when Cecilia has all of these pages about elm trees and Chase is like, why does she have so many, like, how long can you lament about elm trees? It's like, well, you never understood her because that is the core of who she is, these issues. So yeah, exactly. Something that I mentioned earlier though, these catalogs that the boys order and these fantasies that the boys have, one-way fantasies, the girls don't know about this. The voiceover tells us, Giovanni, he tells us that these fantasies scarred those boys forever. And it made them happier with dreams than with wives. So they're still doing this.
Yeah, they're still doing this. But you knew it even after they moved away. The parents moved away, the girls, and they were going through their trash taking the photos of the girls, of the family. It said, they were like, oh, they just left and Mr. Headley just like put everything up for sale, did garage sales and stuff, and we sifted through the garbage for all their photos. Like they were, like that's where it starts getting creepy too.
I don't think so. This is just me. I don't think so. I think it is as creepy as Helga's Hey Albert shrine. It is just another expression of childhood feelings and angst. So like these people that you obsessed with are gone. So collect as much of them as you possibly can, because all of it was discarded by their parents anyway, because they didn't care.
But here we are, we can. Okay.
Yeah. So it's not creepy.
No, it's really helpful to have this conversation to see this different point of view, because I've watched it twice today. And again, this is the first time I've watched it, and I'm so locked into this. This is gross. This is creepy. Because I haven't had a different POV or conversation with anybody about it.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think it is just like collecting the last remaining pieces of this obsession that you had, that you cherished, that was not cherished by anybody else because they packed up the house and they didn't care and they left everything to be sold off. So why not keep it? And I like it. We'll get to it at the end, but like the zoom in on the crown, it's like all of these memories that you would think a parent would take because you would want it, and they left it all to like scatter in the wind. It's just, it's very good. And I do like the idea that these girls ruin these boys because, we like that. But all of this to say that it took a week for these boys, at least a week, to figure out to call these girls on the phone, just as you alluded to earlier. They're 14. It is what it is. 727 phone numbers. This is just a little interesting fun fact. Most movie phone numbers are 555 when you see them. And 555 Mary is the number that is on the card that Cecilia is holding during her first attempt in the opening of the movie. But their numbers here are 727. And what happens here is just a back and forth of records being played over the phone between the boys and the girls. And I do find the girls' access to music interesting because I would like to know what system the mom uses to make some things okay and some things not okay. But whatever.
Well, because I think because the specific records were rock records. So she had Kiss, she had Aerosmith. I can't remember the third band that she had mentioned. She's like, please, not this one. Please, not this one. Anything but this one. And it's a lot. It's a lot. I've had my music revoked too. So Lux, I feel you in that moment, and everything is so huge, and it feels unfair because also sometimes it's the punishment doesn't fit the crime to be going this extreme. But as we know, it's right off the tails of an intense church sermon, and we know how devout her mom is, and it kind of impedes on her relationships with everybody.
It does.
And I'm not defending her.
Did you have a Shadowhunters flashback here when they started talking about memories fading of the girls? I mean, they had a very specific, it's line for line from Shadowhunters. Yeah.
Because they were we were starting to forget their freckles and their moles and
the color of their eyes started to fade. So again, just going back to what you were saying, no, I don't think it's weird and creepy when they go back and get the family photos, because they say here that they were losing them, right? They were communicating, they were doing the records and everything, but they were losing the everyday details of them. So going back and finding their pictures does make sense to me when they drop that line here. Where they were losing them. It's of course they went and got the photos. They said earlier that they were losing them. It made sense to me. We do have the fight here with Lux. It is a very, very, very fast scene. And we don't even see Lux fighting with her mom. We just see the dad, James Wood, in the hallway overhearing the fight between Lux and her mom. And all it is I can't breathe in here. I'm suffocating. And the mom saying but you're safe here. So that specifically suffocating can go back to the records being burned with the smoky house, and then to later with the debutante ball and the gas masks. It's all very connected.
By this point in the film, we are, they've learned Morse code. They're talking with the boys.
They're communicating Morse code.
Little do the boys know that their call for them, meet us at midnight, is to, I don't want to say help aid them in their escape, because at that point they didn't escape.
They did escape.
Was it
they did aid in their escape?
They chose their freedom, the girls.
They escaped, yeah.
They escaped, yeah. But it was interesting, at least, and this will be helpful, the way I see it, and you can probably explain it better. It was these boys obsessed with these girls, and these girls finally reach out to them. And here they are in this white night. We're here to save you. We're here to save you. We have a car. I can drive. And we know at this point, Lux is the only one alive right now. And she's toying with their emotions. How is she so calm?
She's stalling.
Oh.
She's stalling. They're all still alive at that point. She's stalling.
Because the boys even said
They hear something. They hear noise.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't realize she was stalling. Because I knew the boys, when they left the basement, they were look, she must have unalived when we were in the house.
Yeah. Yeah. So they don't know the order. So they get the note. Tim gets the note in the car that says, look for the signal at midnight. They get the signal. The boys sneak into the house. Our first indication that something is massively wrong here is Lux is smoking inside of the house. That is our first red flag. Obviously, something is wrong. For several times watching this, and still to this day, I still feel like they murdered the parents too. It is like headcanon to me that they killed the parents too. That is just how I think of it. I know that they didn't. So
I was shocked when the parents were still alive. I thought it was going to be a murder-suicide situation.
Yeah. So yeah, I did too. But our first indicator is that Lux is smoking in the house, and she like turns around, and her eyes, you can tell there's something wrong with her eyes. And yeah, the boys are like, we have a car. We can take you anywhere. Like, obviously they're children. They're not going anywhere. They have no supplies. Like, they didn't pack anything. So she says like, yeah, we had to wait for my parents to come and sleep. My sisters are coming, right? Like, they're coming. It takes forever. They're coming. So she's stalling because the noises that the boys are hearing there when Chase is like, I think I hear your mom, are the girls like kind of following through with everything. And when Lux is like, we need to take our car. It has more room. We'll take our car. Wait here for 5 minutes and then come to the car with everybody. And that's when she undoes the belt buckle. When she looks back, she has tears in her eyes. So like she knows that like what she's going to do. And she knows at that point that her sisters have already passed away. It's really, that last look is like really oof. Really oof. But the boys do, though, have this fantasy of driving away with them, right? It's very road trippy. The windows are down, like they're all together and laughing. There's ice cream. It's a really beautiful escape fantasy. They're children. They were never going to go anywhere. Like, come on.
No, and I also looked at that, especially the moment where Lux is hanging out the window and feeling the breeze. It also feels like very whimsical in the fact that they have a sense of freedom in that moment. So it's an escapism for the boys that they're kind of like creating this freedom for the girls. But I looked at it as like they're free. And the fact that dream aligns with kind of like the completion of like all the girls like following through with their actions, they're free in that moment too. And I say that with such respect and not encouraging anybody. But I can only imagine in that moment when somebody feels like this is the only option.
Absolutely. And talking about options, Bonnie. Okay. So the boys were in the living room. I'm trying to get the order. The boys were in the living room. Lux was in the garage. It took Lux about 5 minutes, that whole thing. Bonnie was the noise that they heard in the basement. So that's when they went down to the basement and Bonnie had hung herself. And then Mary was in the kitchen. She put her head in the oven. Therese took a bunch of sleeping pills. And then, of course, Lux was in the car and the parents were completely fine, which is just like so annoying. How did you not hear anything? So there's a little plot hole there, but like, whatever.
My plot hole there with the parents came from the kitchen and the carbon monoxide in the garage, because between the two of them, something should have happened, which goes into where we think like the parents were going to die too, because I would think in that situation, all those fumes, something's bound to get to the parents' room.
Yeah. So my personal headcanon is that the parents died too. And that's why like somebody else packed up the house and somebody else sold the house. And like, that is just my personal headcanon. But this is essentially more or less the end of the movie. It goes through, the girls being taken out, the house being sold. There's just this overwhelming like clock ticking noise. And it talks about the boys buying all of the souvenirs. And, there's the focus on the crown that is right there. That is so fucking tragic. But it's also like that was such a happy, happy memory that it bothers me that the father would leave that and not take it, because he was there to witness, you know, even though it was like the catalyst, I don't know. There's just, it was just another indicator to me, like, yes, the boys should have that because at least they cared enough, because the dad just, the boys cared more than the parents, in my opinion, even if it was like meh. So the absolute end of the movie takes place exactly 1 year from Cecilia's first attempt. And the narrator and, you know, the boys do say that their parents moved on like it wasn't a thing. Their parents had no problem with it, which is, I'm not going to say like typical of the area, because I don't think it's typical of the area. I could say that it is typical of the community that this movie is trying to portray, that being a very high-class, waspy country club kind of situation where things like this are swept under the rug. So I do understand the parents like totally just checking out on all of this and being very creatively tone deaf on the gas mask toxicity debutante themed parties, because the parents were eating that shit up. But like read the room, but that embellished gas mask was fire. Like, I don't know.
I love the green one. I was like, okay, we got bling in the 70s. I forgot we're in like, even because I feel like for the most part, there's two very different types of 70s people think of. It's either like, you know, what we have portrayed here, or it's very Studio 54 with the disco and the bling and the fun and the Donna Summer of it all. And we got a little Donna Summer of it all in the ignorance, I guess.
Yeah. And then the thing here that really drove this home to me when I was a child watching this is that guy that does like, you know, I can't take it anymore, and like falls back into the pool. He's like, I'm a teenager. Don't you understand? I have problems. And I remember watching this as a child being like, yeah, this is why like we don't respect adults. You are dismissing our problems and you're not taking them seriously. And like, look what happened. And you're totally sweeping it under the rug. I remember having like all of this like fury when that guy fell in the pool. I was just like, you're missing the point.
I was so, yeah, I already wrote like adults are so crass. And they are. And some still do. Some still do. Be like, well, you don't understand what real problems are. Regardless, at that point in time, whatever somebody's going through, it is a big enough issue. You know, we as people are allowed to have feelings and feel your feelings and feel a certain way, and to have other people judge you for that and mock you for that is just, it's so loud seeing this in the movie. But I'm sure that there are others who will watch this and be like, he's right, you know.
Oh, absolutely. And we know exactly who those people would be. But this is the end. This is the absolute end of the movie. We have our 4 boys after the debutante party. Chase has got the lighter up. They are saluting this empty house. And they do the lines like, you know, they hadn't heard us calling. They didn't hear us calling them out of their rooms, like all of that. And again, as a child, sure. But also as a child, you didn't know anything that they were going through. You knew absolutely none of their problems. So like, yes, you can say that like, yeah, you were calling them out of their house, but like you weren't helping them with anything at all. You had no idea about what they were like as sisters, what the dynamic was, anything that was going on inside of the house, any sort of trauma, anything, probably even like mundane details they didn't know. They probably have just like a mass like smattering of details. So like they didn't love these girls. And at this moment, you know, with the lighter, it's like a very salute, you know, kind of situation. It is a very self-centered kind of ending for these boys, right? they're like, you know, oh, we were there, they didn't hear us. It's like, okay, they had their own shit going on. But it is objectively a really beautiful shot because they're up there, they've got everything pulled on, and then the camera pans out, and the camera pans up, like down the street a little bit, and then up, kind of showing that, like, that's not the issue here. Like, society is crumbling here. Like, you're kind of focusing on the wrong thing when they take it that way. But it is a really kind of beautiful ending, cinematically. And that's it. That's the end of the movie. Obviously, I love this movie. Jess, I feel like you're a little cranky on this movie, but that's fine. That's fun content.
No, I think I'm cranky because I'm seeing it with a completely different set of eyes, because I don't have the nostalgia experience. I'm only seeing it from I'm seeing it from like this solely from an adult point of view. And that's why when we're talking it out, you're like, look, if you were 13 or you were 14 and this guy was putting in this effort, you're going to sit and tell me that you wouldn't be into this? No, I would. I probably would, but I haven't experienced it at that point. I didn't watch that at that point in my life where this movie would have been so critical for me. The way we have with other 90s movies that I'm like, I know it's problematic, but I still love the movie so much.
How did this slip under the radar for you? Like, because you watched other things that came out at this time. How come this one skipped you?
I feel like it was probably just along the content, like the context of, I'm trying to think, like, where was I in 99? I was at a point in my life, I don't want to say it and I don't want to date it. But there was a lot of censorship in what I can and cannot watch. And I think when like parental figures knew the context of certain things, that's when more things were censored, as opposed to, I'd say like, oh, I really want to watch this movie. And they'd be like, okay, I don't know much about it. That's where where I think a lot of things kind of like overlap. But I also didn't have any friends, if you get older, you have your, if you have sleepovers or you're like, oh, you haven't seen this movie, we got to watch it now. No, I don't even remember having somebody saying like, we have to watch this movie. Nobody I know watched it at all, even though I had heard of it. I don't think it was just a priority for the people I was hanging out with.
Interesting.
But Lord knows I saw the sweetest thing.
Yeah, well, priorities, right? Priorities. Again, this movie suffered from kind of like an artsy, vibey, all vibes, no substance kind of thing. And also, Sofia Coppola is a Nepo baby, and people did not have a lot of faith in this. So, that's kind of part of it too.
That's a then or now situation.
Exactly. I have just a smattering of fun facts because there aren't a lot of them. I have just a smattering, and then we can wrap this up. I have Alicia Silverstone was offered Mary. She said no. Scarlett Johansson was offered a role. It was too intense. Grosse Pointe in the beginning of this movie is spelled incorrectly. That is just a continuity thing that bothers me because I've been there. The photo that the dad takes of all of the girls before homecoming does foreshadow their deaths and the way that they die.
I had to pause it because you know how in some movies they'll like freeze the screenshot of the photo? They didn't do that here. So I paused it while watching it, and it was like you have, one of the girls, their eyes are closed. Bonnie's arm appears to be scratching her upper back, which resembles her hanging. You have Lux. Her hand is hanging out in the photo, which is similar to how it was in the garage. Oh, yeah. You have the sleeping pill, so Teresa's eyes are closed.
It was really good. That took me a really long time, many years to figure out because Bonnie with the hand. I was like, what? But we got there. We got there.
Did you look at the fun fact and then pick up on that, or you finally picked up on that on your own?
I looked at the fun fact and was like, oh, well, that of course. But like, no, I had no idea. No, I'm not a smart person. No, I did not know that.
Stop. You're smart.
The address here is 2037. That is the address of where the girls live. Two of the records that Lux burns are Aerosmith and Kiss. Giovanni Riosi, I'm just butchering that, but Giovanni Riosi is the narrator, but he is not in the film. Sophia has said that this is a slow burn environmental disaster movie. Very fun. A member of the band Sonic Youth gave this book to Sophia. Very fun. Very fun. The entire movie takes place over 13 months from June to August, and the physical decay of the house was not something that I picked up on until I was an adult. Just throwing that out there. It's my own fun fact.
You watch this movie pretty regularly too. I mean, maybe not like a yearly thing, but
yes, I do. Well, I would say like friend of show, Becky, asked me recently, because this is one of her favorite movies, when did I last watch it? I watch it every couple of years. You know, it's when it comes up, I like to watch it. It's not long, so I can watch like the first, little bit of it before it gets like too tragic. But yeah, I think so.
Do you consider it a comfort movie because of that nostalgia connection?
This is a very good question. Yes, I would consider this a comfort movie because of the nostalgia that I have, because I like grew up there, because I'm just like so connected, and because I saw it when I was so young, and because Josh Hartnett was such a staple of my childhood crushes with Othello and The Faculty and 40 Days of Night and 40 Days and Nights. It was like a staple.
40 Days, 40 Nights. That is.
Yeah, so it's like a staple. So yeah, I would say that this is a comfort movie. It's a comfort movie. It is one of my favorite movies. It is not one of my 3 favorite movies that I watch all of the time. This would be a solid number 5 on my favorite movies list for sure.
That's still pretty high.
Oh, definitely. I love this movie. This movie to me is unique, stylistically, the narrative is unique to me. I like Sofia Coppola's style. Obviously, Kirsten Dunst was a huge part of my childhood growing up. I love her. And the sisterhood theme. I am an only child. I have never had any sort of relationship like this. So to even witness from the outside, from the boys' perspective, 5 sisters like this was just, again, a unique experience because they weren't constantly poking and picking and prodding and bringing each other down and like belittling each other the way a lot of sister relationships can be portrayed, especially during this time when it came out in the 90s.
Yeah. Oh, that's such a good point. I have usually it's just like sisters fighting so hard and then like not even really apologizing, but like asking like, you want to grab food later. But everybody was kind of in solidarity with each other. Very much it's us against the world kind of thing. Cause it really was not just like the external world of the community that they were in, but their internal world and their personal environments at home.
Exactly. So obviously, yes, I really love this movie. Of course, you are lukewarm. That is fine. I would love to know what the listeners think. That would be super fun. And also, I think that, and Jess, you and I were talking about this earlier, but Kirsten Dunst is a phenomenal actress with a huge, huge range that we were talking earlier. We don't feel like she's in the conversation a lot when it comes to talent. And considering that like she is our Claudia, and like she's still like successfully working today. I just feel like she should be celebrated a little more. So I'm just throwing that out there in the universe.
No, and I know we probably have some more Kirsten Dunst movies on deck for future episodes too, which will be really fun to explore. But I agree with you. Just like the range of her in general, I think we sometimes forget, it's more than just Interview with the Vampire, and it's more than just Bring It On. So seeing this, especially at such a young age, and, I know we've discussed her in Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. It's always just so refreshing to remember, like, oh, that's right. And that's also why they're still working, because they have that flexibility and that range. And she has, not to my knowledge, or I've ever considered her to be somebody who's been pigeonholed in their art and their craft.
And just to go full circle, because I close all my circles when I talk on ACOFAE Podcast, or I try to. So Give Me Back My Girlhood. It was mine first. I really think is the perfect kind of sum up of this movie, right? You could say like Trip stole Lux's girlhood. You could say the mother stole all of their girlhoods. You could say the boys were actively trying to steal any part of their girlhood that they could get their hands on. And that these boys are still wallowing in this stolen girlhood all of these years later, because there is something that cannot be replicated about that time in your life. And it is unique.
Agreed. And with that, thanks for joining us. Thanks for listening. Feel free to follow us on Instagram for ACOFAE Podcast. We're also both on TikTok, ACOFAE Laura and ACOFAE Jessica. And if you feel so kind to leave us a 5-star review, we'd always appreciate that. Thanks, and talk to y'all soon. Bye.
Bye.